this budget, and just as well that I'm speaking now at this juncture, this budget is said to be a woman's budget, but most women would say not really. It is just a drop, a penny in the ocean. I'm a woman in my late 50s, one of the most vulnerable in our society today. I have lived experiences of what most recently divorced women face, which is poverty, unemployment, underemployment, and then unemployment permanently, followed by homelessness. Despite being university trained, I remain unemployed, living on Job Seeker. Can you even afford a room on Job Seeker in Canberra? It's $200 on average, a room. Not possible. My question, and please, no more spin and no more patting yourselves on the back. The ball was dropped long ago by the Liberals and Labour, and now it's time to catch up. And yes, the budget is blown out, but takes money to make money, and money spent in the right areas. So I want to know, why are the most vulnerable women left out of this budget?
Before we go to the panel on that, Mel, can I just ask you, did you ever imagine finding yourself homeless?
No, not at all. I was brought here to this country by the federal government because of my qualifications. But, you know, us women are the ones that in the past gave up our careers, followed the men's careers for our kids, looked after the kids. And we're vulnerable. Add anything else to it, such as disability, gender, diversity. And you slip even further down the ladder of vulnerability. This budget doesn't take it into consideration at all. This budget is very much for those at the top of the ladder, the haves, again. And then, if we were to look at COVID, it's a cruel equaliser. It's going to be a cruel equaliser, but it's not reflected in the budget at all. And then, us as women are going to again bear the brunt in the future when it comes to climate change and the economies of our children. What will the economy be for our children? They are going to have to pay for it.
Let's go to Helen Haines.
Yes. Mel, thank you for raising this. And when I was trawling through the budget papers, I was asking myself the same question. Where are the measures for this very vulnerable group of women, such as yourself? And I'm just appalled to hear your story, really. It is, when I see you as a woman now in your 50s facing this situation, and when I hear Taylor as a young woman at the other end of the spectrum lamenting that we're at this point for women, and when I hear that women are the secondary income earner, I see the structural problem that we have. So yes, we've got measures for childcare. They were called for, but women are staying at home or being the ones that are using childcare because they remain the secondary earner. They remain the ones who are out of the workforce when they're having children and not receiving superannuation during that period. And you're an example now of someone who's come to this point in your life when you're so productive still. So productive, so many skills, brought here with hope. Look, the reality is that we wouldn't have any of the measures in this budget that we've heard this week if it weren't for women like you, women like Taylor, women all through this audience and all around the nation who marched on the parliament and in their hometowns to call for some relief. But still, people like you are missing out, and we have to fix that. We do.
Jane Hume, does it surprise you when the government is spending so much money and allocating so much funding that there still seems to be so many people that feel they've missed out?
I do know that older women are a vulnerable group, and particularly because women our age didn't grow up particularly with compulsory superannuation all of their working lives, or if they did, it started off at much lower amounts. And we also took time out of the workforce to look after children. Getting divorced is never a financially helpful experience, and I speak from experience there myself. So we are a vulnerable cohort. On top of that, there are many women in our generation that are looking after elderly parents still. We're the sandwich generation. We look after grandchildren and we look after elderly parents as well. And that prevents a lot of older women from re-entering the workforce. Now, one of the things that we've done is establish the Career Revive program that helps older women get back into the workforce in regional and rural areas, and a mid-career checkpoint for women in urban areas as well. We've also abolished the 450 rule. For those people that aren't familiar with the 450 rule, it was established when superannuation began back in 1992, and it said that anybody that earns less than $450 a month doesn't need to be paid superannuation. $450 a month times 12 was $5,400, and that was the tax-free threshold back in 1992, and it hasn't changed all that time. Well, now we can change it because we've brought down fees in superannuation, particularly for low balances, and we've automated payroll systems. So it's actually now easier to pay superannuation to your employees than not pay superannuation to employees. About 300,000 people will be affected by this, but about 200,000 of them are women, and they are some of our lowest paid in society. People like aged care workers or cleaners, people that work lots of different jobs and earn smaller amounts but from different contracts. So that's a really important change. And finally, what we'd like to see is more women, particularly separated parents or single parent families, start to own their own homes. And that's why we introduced the Family Home Guarantee. That money that you're sending towards your rent, which often can be $300 or $400 or $500 a week, you're good creditors, but you can't quite get that first step in the home loan ladder. Well, from now on, you'll be able to purchase your first home, not just your first home, but re-enter the housing market with as little as a 2% deposit rather than a 20% deposit, and the government will guarantee the remaining 18%. So if I'm a single woman, a single parent family, I can buy a house in Melbourne for $600,000 with not $120,000, but $12,000.
Who's got $12,000 lying around?
Who can buy a house in Canberra?
No one can afford
on that. Jesus, come on.
Wouldn't you rather an opportunity to buy your own home rather than have to be forced to go into social housing? It's just about a leg up for those who can. You just miss out on that first step in the ladder.
It will be inflationary, and you're kidding yourself if you
It's
think single parents have got
10,000
$12,000 lying
opportunities
around
over 4
when you just
years.
cut job seeker in half and just ended JobKeeper. To Mel, thank you so much for sharing your story. The reward for a lifetime of care for women is retirement in poverty. We have women being underpaid. The gender pay gap is still very real. We still have female-dominated workplaces paid less, and this budget doesn't tackle the structural inequality that perpetuates that. The stage 3 tax cuts, 1 year of that will give more money to men than the whole 4 years that this government has allocated to women on all issues, on childcare, on domestic violence funding. And can I say on that, there are women being turned away from shelters and from domestic violence response services because those services don't have enough funds to help everyone. This government have doubled the funding. That sounds good, but the sector says they still need 4 times as much as that to help everyone that reaches out for help. And when they can afford to give $51 billion to big fossil fuel companies in cheap diesel, they can afford to make sure that every woman and child and person that seeks help when they flee violence can get that help.
$1.1 billion, come on.
It's not enough. Not enough.
You can't have it both ways, Larissa. We've added $1.1 billion to our women's safety package, and we've included wraparound services for women that are fleeing situations of domestic violence, which we've never seen before. This is actually a transformational change
It is an
in
increase,
how we
but
deal
it's
with
still
domestic
not
violence. And if it's still not enough, well, then we get into more debt. And these people are now telling us that they're concerned
don't give
about
the handouts
debt.
to the big corporations and the billionaires. Make them pay their fair share so that we can all have the services we need.
Yeah. That's easy. Can I just add by saying we now have the highest female participation rate in the workforce than we have ever had before at 61.8%, and the gender pay gap has come down to 13.4%, up from a high of 17% under the last Labor government.
We shouldn't have a gender pay gap at all.
All right. If any components of this conversation is raising issues for you, you can contact Beyond Blue or Lifeline on the numbers that are on your screen right now.